Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on this channel, and today I'm going to give a rundown of the models over the next 7 days or so. We're about to get into a more active weather pattern by the end of this month, so I want to get a video out discussing what the models are showing and give a bottom line of the expectations for the next 7 days. So before I do that, here is a list of the main takeaways from this video and kind of the bottom line up front. So over the next 7 days, the jet stream is going to be pretty active across the southern United States and give us an active weather pattern. With mainly two storm systems that we're watching. The first one is going to be tonight and into tomorrow across the Midwestern states, with perhaps a marginal hail threat, but widespread severe weather is not expected. And then tomorrow night, as the cold front pushes through from the Ohio Valley down to the Gulf Coast states, mainly with rain and perhaps a few thunderstorms, but severe weather is not expected. The storm system is going to be pretty quick moving, and once the cold front comes through, it's going to be bring a pretty calm weekend and seasonably warm temperatures across the southeast. So a pretty nice weekend in store for us, but that's going to make way for very warm temperatures and well above average to start the week early next week. And then that's going to be ahead of a much stronger storm system that's going to affect the eastern half of the U.S. And we may have all the ingredients in place for a more widespread severe weather event. So strong storms are possible next Tuesday and Wednesday for regions that I will be showing you later in the video. So we'll talk about that and the uncertainties surrounding it. So if you enjoy this video, leave a like and subscribe, and we're going to get started. So let's take a look at the current state of the atmosphere. And so I'll show the upper level water vapor imagery, and you can see the jet stream is pretty active here. So we have our next storm system that we're watching here. You can see coming into the desert southwest. And so the jet stream is pretty active across the southern U.S. and we're going to see here on our upper air charts. But let's look at the radar here. Pretty quiet across much of the country, outside of a few scattered showers across the Great Lakes and the western interior of the U.S. So now let's go and look at the synoptic scale pattern by looking at the upper air charts on the SPC mesoanalysis. So this is at 300 millibars, and we are looking for the upper level jet stream. The subtropical jet that originates from the Pacific is pretty active across the southern United States this week, indicated by the stronger winds in the upper levels. So at 500 millibars, we're looking for our upper level wave pattern, and so such as our troughs and our ridges. And in general, we had some troughiness that was over the southeastern U.S., but that has since moved offshore, and so now we're left with some ridging here across the the central United States, and that is bringing some calmer weather for briefly for the eastern half of the U.S. And then this is our next trough that we're watching here across the desert southwest, and that's going to be ejecting into the plains and across the southern United States on Thursday. So we can go down here to the surface here, and it's pretty quiet surface pattern with high pressure across the eastern United States, maybe some broad surface low development across Kansas and the central United States, but that's going to tighten up as the trough ejects into the plains tonight, as we're going to see here in the model data. And so now we can look at the moisture here, and this is the main drawback for this storm system here. The moisture quality is not all that good for this system, so the moisture return is not going to be all that robust. We do have some moisture return across Texas and the southern United States, with some 50s and 60s dew points shaded in the blues and the greens. But our target region is going to be up in the Midwest states, so it's going to be across Illinois and Indiana, and then I think there's a second marginal risk also out for southeast Kansas and Missouri, mainly for a hail threat. But so as you can see, this is a kind of pretty long ways to go for the moisture, deeper moisture, to get up into the Midwest. So widespread severe weather is not expected, but although there could be a few storms that, if they're able to get strong enough, could produce some hail. The mass response to this storm system is also not all that strong as of right now. I'm going to look at 850 millibars here, and so this is going to show the low-level jet indicated by these stronger winds here that are shaded in. So the low-level jet is sort of there, but not quite all that strong just yet. It is going to strengthen some uh, over tonight and into tomorrow. So that is responsible for the warm air advection and transporting that maritime tropical air mass from the Gulf of Mexico, transporting that to the north. So as that mass response tightens up a little bit, you'll see those higher dew points get further north, but it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be enough to have widespread severe weather issues. That's kind of what the atmosphere looks like as of right now. So let's dive into the model forecast over the next 7 days. So in the short range, that's going to be valid up through about 12Z on Friday. Most of the models are generally in pretty good agreement, so for now, we'll just look at the 12Z GFS for the short range. And so we're watching this short wave that's going to eject from the desert southwest into the southern plains and the southern United States during the day on Thursday. And it's going to get absorbed in this larger trough that's coming down from Canada here. And so we're just going to have mostly zonal west-east flow across the southern United States. So it's going to lose kind of its so it's kind of going to de-amplify as it moves to the east. So let's look at the low-level jet that I mentioned before here. That's going to strengthen here at 850 millibars during the day on Thursday. So you see about 40 to 50 knots of flow here out of the southwest across the central U.S. and into the southern U.S. And so that's going to help enhance that warm air advection and bring that maritime tropical air mass up from the Gulf and transport it northward here. And so that's going to slide off to the eastern seaboard here during the day on Friday as the storm system moves off to the east. So we should see pretty decent surface low development here. I'll show you that here on the GFS. So we'll go back here. This is tonight at midnight. And so we have a pretty tight surface low here across the southern plains. And so as a result, as the mass response tightens up a little bit as we go through tonight into Thursday, and so that's going to drag a cold front down through the southern and eastern United States in short range. So that's going to be Thursday and through Friday. So as discussed before, mostly just rain and a few embedded thunderstorms expected tonight and into tomorrow night, with very little severe weather expected. So and that's mainly due to the dew points not being all that high with this system. So 50s dew points do make it up into the Midwestern states tonight, and that might be enough to destabilize the atmosphere just enough for maybe a few stronger thunderstorms in the Midwest. But as we go through the day, those higher dew points are mostly going to be confined to the Gulf Coast states, or Gulf Coast region, on Thursday and into Thursday night. So mostly just expecting rain and maybe a few thunderstorms as the cold front slides down to the south towards the Gulf of Mexico. So that's going to lead us into the medium range here. That's going to be from 6 a.m. Friday, so it's 12Z Friday to about 12Z on Monday. And so mainly the main thing we're going to pay attention to is the moisture here. And that's going to lead up to a discussion for next week in the storm system that we're expecting. Starting at 12Z on Friday here, I'll sketch in the cold front here with temperatures that are also overlaid based on the GFS. And so a cold front is kind of somewhere down through the Mid-Atlantic and the southeastern states, just starting to get into the Gulf of Mexico. And so that is going to sweep the Gulf of the higher moisture. So that cold front then pushes down all the way into the Gulf of Mexico by Friday night. And so that's going to also push our higher dew points, those 50s and 60s dew points, down into the southern Gulf of Mexico by Saturday morning. So the reason why moisture is important is because that will have big implications on the potential severe weather threat next week. This is one of the first signs on whether or not we're going to see a significant severe weather threat materialize. So I'll start with the GFS for the weekend, and then I'll compare it with the European model. In the medium range, that's going to be up through 12Z on Monday. The surface winds in the Gulf will be out of the north on Saturday based on the GFS. So these are or northerly surface winds here forecasted on the GFS. So that's going to be bringing down cooler and drier air down into the Gulf of Mexico behind the cold front. So as we go forward through the day on Saturday and then on Sunday, those winds will need to flip back around to the south in order to bring up those higher dew points back to the north. And so that's what happens on Sunday based on the GFS. You can see here by Sunday afternoon, especially across the western Gulf, those surface winds are pretty much out of the south here. So that's going to help bring up those higher dew points, and I'll show you what that looks like here. So on Saturday, those higher dew points are shunted down to the south across the southern Gulf of Mexico, and then as we go through the day on Sunday, those higher dew points start to return to the southern plains. And so then as we go forward through the next week, those higher dew points are going to be more easily transported across a pretty wide area. So let's compare this with the European model and see if this shows the same thing. I'll start back during the day on Friday, so let's track this cold front. So stretching down from the northeastern states down into the southeast and getting into the Gulf of Mexico. So the GFS and the European are generally in agreement on the position of the cold front on Friday, and so this cold front pushes into the Gulf of Mexico, and then by Saturday, the winds are pretty much straight out of the north here across the Gulf of Mexico. So that's going to bring down the cooler and drier air mass down into the Gulf, and that's going to sweep the Gulf of the higher moisture. So on this model site, we don't have dew points on for the European model, but it's generally going to show you what's going on in the atmosphere. The winds will continue to be out of the north during the day on Saturday based on the European model. And let's see when those winds flip back around to the south. Those happen again during the day on Sunday. So the GFS and the European model generally agree on the timing of when their moisture return is going to start. So that's one thing here that leads to the potential for severe weather, or at least the confidence in severe weather for next week, since both models are generally in decent agreement on the moisture return, or at least the timing of that. So that's going to lead us into the longer range here. And so we'll talk more specifically about the severe weather threat potential for middle of next week. In the long range, let's begin with the upper air pattern on the GFS at 500 millibars. So we're looking for our trough and ridge pattern. So this is going to be a pretty complex pattern, as we're going to have both of the polar jet and the subtropical jet in play here. And so these two jets are going to end up phasing together in the middle of the week, and that'll provide one powerful branch of the jet stream. So models are going to struggle with this phasing and the configuration of the developing trough and the timing of that trough. So all of these uncertainties will have an effect on the severe weather potential for Tuesday and Wednesday. And so it may be several days before we really get a better handle on the overall setup. Going forward on the GFS, these two jet streams are going to remain pretty much separate and disorganized here through Tuesday and Wednesday. And so while there would still be some threat of severe weather that would result from this in the exit region here of this jet stream, it may not be quite as potent as but it may not be quite as potent because of a weaker mass response to this feature. So let's compare this with the European model. So at 12Z on Monday, we still have our two different jets that we're watching. So this is the polar jet up here, and then this is the subtropical jet over here. And so let's watch how the European model phases these two jets together. So we go through the day on Monday and then through Tuesday, and then especially by Wednesday, these two jets phase together much more efficiently. And so this would provide much stronger support, upper level support, and a stronger mass response for a more robust threat of severe weather in the exit region of this trough here. So that would be anywhere from, from about the Midwest states down into the Tennessee and Ohio valleys for Tuesday into Wednesday. So the SPC does mention the possibility of severe weather in this time frame, but based on the uncertainty and of how the models are handling this trough, they're holding off on probabilities and issuing outlooks until we see better agreement in the day 4 to day 8 period. So once we know more, I can get more specific on the overall environment, the locations, who's in and who's out, and the hazards from the severe weather. So hopefully over the weekend I can dive in a little bit more deeply dive in a little bit deeply into this severe weather setup, potentially for Tuesday and Wednesday. And so be on the lookout for that. So if you enjoy this video, leave a like, and that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.